Walking out of the theater back in May when I went to see Guardians of the Galaxy 3 with a buddy of mine, I had sort of a thought, and I'm sure this is after I had done cry my eyes out over a furry little trash panda, and I was thinking to myself, I really need to replay the Guardians of the Galaxy video game. So I did that. Boy, am I glad that I did so, because replaying this absolute gem of a game made me feel all the sadness and the happiness that the movies made me feel. Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy is a game developed by Eidos Montreal and published by Square Enix. When this game was first announced, many people, including myself, thought this was going to be another Avengers style video game and wasn't really impressed by the demo that was shown. While I did enjoy Avengers and put roughly 200 hours into it, I felt that the single player portions of the game greatly outperformed the multiplayer aspects, as they felt more flat in nature and they became more grindy and less story based towards the end. And then here we have Guardians of the Galaxy, the game, which is a completely opposite 180 from what Avengers was. And this is a solely single player focused experience more akin to Uncharted. Guardians of the Galaxy's writing rivals some of the stuff that James Gunn has done with the iterations of the MCU characters, even taking home the award for Best Narrative at the 2021 Game Awards. And I did want to mention the MCU counterparts, as the ones that we get in this game are vastly different from them, and that might be a big turnoff for a lot of people looking at this game from the outside in, but the shell of the characters is still there. The Guardians team is more akin to the Guardians in Volume 1, where we first meet them off, which we're kind of first meeting them off here. Still trying to get a feel for each other, but still understanding the past histories of each of the characters. Gamora is still the daughter of Thanos, and Drax's family was still slain by Thanos, so you have that tension between the two characters a lot like in the MCU versions. Drax makes it a point that he doesn't like Gamora or any of the past experiences that they've had, with little jabs and idiosyncrasies as well.
We must soon discuss the status of my official team membership badge.
Drax! Once again, there is no official badge.
Obviously, you would not have one, assassin. The small one indicated the procedure is a well-guarded secret.
Rocket, stop messing with him.
Stand back. I will breach the perimeter.
It's too thick.
It's too thick.
Who knew?
Groot, super chill, no issues with him as well. Only words are
I am Groot.
in Rocket's story in particular in this game, now knowing what happened with him at the hands of the High Evolutionary and the Kree scientist, it does sort of give it a different perspective now having watched Volume 3 and going back and revisiting here. And then you do also get a glimpse at the leader, the de facto leader of the Guardians team, Peter Quill, aka Star-Lord. And you get to see sort of his flashbacks and early events of his life, and they do sort of track similar to what does happen in the MCU, but obviously with different deviations. He still has his love for music as well as his obsession with his Walkman, and each of these characters makes up a portion of the newly formed team that you will come to know and love.
Gardeners of the Galaxy?
What? No. Rocket. So I let Groot fill out the paperwork. I fixed it with an addendum.
Not the most well-known heroes you could hire, but definitely in the top 5 of...
Next up, I'm going to go ahead and talk about gameplay. While the gameplay isn't anything particular to write home about, it does offer a decent amount of variety as the game progresses and you unlock more skills and abilities for each of the characters. Unlike the aforementioned Avengers, Guardians of the Galaxy has you playing as Star-Lord and only as Star-Lord, controlling the other Guardians through abilities in combat. Star-Lord is fitted with his trusty blaster, which is also able to be upgraded at workbenches found across the map with materials you can find as the game goes on, with options to either stun enemies faster or have a quicker cooldown. Progressing throughout the game does unlock different elements that are used on the blaster as well, one being an electric mode that can stun enemies but also override electrical panels, or the freeze mode, which is pretty self-explanatory. It freezes enemies in place, but it also has the unique function of being able to freeze water, creating a platform allowing you to sort of walk up and make your way through it. It's also used for specific enemies as well that might have a certain color shield where the blaster, that different elemental type will help kind of break down that shield, which adds a little bit of variety to the combat, which is nice. Couple that with the abilities that you start to unlock for each of the characters as the game progresses, you will sort of open up that combat loop, with Groot having the ability to tie down enemies, as well as Gamora having this simple slash attack. While using those on their own can lead to a good amount of damage, using them in tandem usually lead to the target being KO'd in one swift hit, which is really nice, and it does Sort of give you that sense of, oh, you're getting the combat loop and you're kind of getting a feel for it finally.
Chop him, Gamora!
Never see it coming! Not too big to skewer!
And Rocket has this ability to throw a gravity grenade that will pull in a bunch of enemies, and then you can follow it up with Drax running through the enemies like a linebacker, which is one of his abilities that you unlock later towards the game. While it might not be like that right off the rip as the game starts, you do progress through the combat encounters, and it does allow you to unlock the levels 1 through 4 abilities that each of these characters have. And each combat encounter is normally followed by puzzle sections or a walking section to get you to the next set piece, and it's how you will look at this for the most of the game.
Precisely why it is majestic.
Following that is going to be exploration. Guardians of the Galaxy does a really good job at allowing you to explore its levels for each of them, and there are 16 of them. And I say 16, that's about 16 missions roughly that you'll be going through. But you will also get a little bit of help from your team when you explore these areas. In some instances, you will see a higher ledge where only Gamora can grab, so you need to tell her it is her turn to go up there and jump up so that she can throw you up higher. That's just one of the abilities that you have. Drax has the ability to pick up and or destroy heavy objects to make a new path, with Groot being able to extend his roots to make a bridge, and Rocket hacking panels to unlock doors. All the Guardians have a special place in the game's exploration. And the exploration is where a lot of the dialogue and exposition is given for our characters, which is kind of a great way because it seems kind of organic with the Guardians just kind of shooting the shit.
Just try to hold her still for us!
That's not gonna be an option soon!
This position is untenable.
Trap incoming! Watch out!
What?
Hang on!
Have you perished, you
Too much debris! I'm taking her out of here!
No! Keep running!
Stop larking around, man!
Really?
Quill, this way!
And there's also these character building moments with choices that can change the path that you might be taking through a level as well. For one instance, Drax does want to throw Rocket across a gap to access a panel. You do have the choice of letting him throw Rocket across, or you can shut Drax down to side with Rocket. Depending on which of the options that you choose here, the characters will react differently than if you would have gone through with either of the plans.
How will we cross? Look around, we'll find another way.
Shooting your way out of every problem again, Peter?
I do.
This does add a sense of depth to your exploration as the other Guardians are constantly reacting to what you are doing and whether or not you're following Rocket's advice. Whether he tells you it's a dead end early on and you want to go that way, and then he promptly roasts you for being wrong. While it's something small, I do love the sense that where we get when these characters are playing with one another and not just going through the motions of the level. There's another instance where Gamora wants to go after a target on her own. Now, normally I would have let her go on her own and be without her for the rest of the mission, but she would have appreciated that I would have trusted her for doing so. But on this playthrough, I decided to follow her as she was trying to go after her target, and while getting close to him, the weight of our two characters caused the platform to buckle and collapse, forcing Gamora to save me, thus staying with us for the duration of the mission at the cost of being royally pissed at me for not letting her go alone.
That's it! I told you to trust me!
A little help over here!
And the reason that I love this moment so much is because the game doesn't outright tell me that I can stop Gamora unless I try to follow her and actually stop her. Any particular instance where that does happen, usually a game is like you either have left or you have the right choice. Pick one and it's very obvious. While this isn't very obvious, there's plenty more of these little moments sprinkled out throughout the game, and they're all within that exploration, which is what I love. Another particular standout for the exploration is the Guardians' trip to Nowhere. The reason for them going to Nowhere I'll explain in the story portion, which will be a little more spoiler focused. But the Guardians arrive on Nowhere, and instead of meeting our contact here, the game decides to let you walk around with plenty of things to do, like spending your money or little junk toys to buy a doll for Gamora that she was looking at, but too embarrassed to let the rest of the crew know that a hardened assassin liked to play with dolls. or sharing a somber yet touching moment with Drax as he reminisces about his wife and daughter that were killed during the Galactic War.
I came to honor the memory of my family. They died without meaning or honor.
I think I know what you mean, man. My mom when the Shatara game. She also died for no reason. They just shot her. But at least she's in a better...
These moments aren't something that the game forces you to do, but if you want to go and explore more within these worlds, it does allow you to do so. And there are even a few areas on the map where you can go ahead, you can slow down, and you can pop your headphones in for a quick jam sesh as well. And this next section is going to be the music. That's right. Music gets its own section in this review. And I had to give the music a proper portion of the game because it is so important and integral to this overall experience. This goes for the licensed music that ranges from the likes of Rick Astley's Never Gonna Give You Up, Billy Idol's White Wedding, and one of my favorite tracks, which you hear in the opening mission, I Ran So Far Away by A Flock of Seagulls. Sadly, I can't show you any of this without getting a copyright strike, and the game does include a streamer mode for people who do intend to stream or upload raw gameplay, which is why you might see that for some of the sequences that I recorded. While I'm glad there is an option like that to exist, I think it would be doing this game a huge disservice playing with the licensed music off. So many of the moments are elevated either by the accompanying song versus the awkward silence that would fill the void if you were to play it without. Separate from all that licensed music is original music that was created under the band tagline Star-Lord, with audio director Steven Sepkowski, I apologize if I said that wrong, and sound designer Johan Burdell, again, sorry if I pronounced that wrong, working together to write an album called Space Rider. And this music is just as good as the licensed songs, and I can show you, I believe, some of it. Correct me if I'm wrong, I might have to mute some parts of it if it ends up causing any issues. And some of that music I still listen to this day along with the licensed music. And any of these tracks can be heard from the Huddle Up option, which is sort of Peter's ultimate where he calls the team to give him a little pep talk.
It feels like they're everywhere, laughing at us.
And yet, we cannot retreat.
No one wants to retreat, big guy, but I gotta say, it's fucking scary out there, Quill.
All right, listen. This isn't our first rodeo, guys. Problem is, if we play it cocky, just one little mistake and they're gonna bring us down. Who's with me?
That was
Way to read the team, Peter.
But for real, I can't explain to you enough why the soundtrack is just so fucking good in this game. Seriously, I would love to know how much money they spent on the music alone because it was worth every single dollar. This is going to be the section where I talk about the story more in depth, so if you would like to avoid story spoilers, please go ahead and skip to this timestamp that I'm showing on the screen now. Alright, that's your spoiler warning, so let's dive into it. And the game opens on a Missouri farm side with Peter and his mom, and in this scene you really get a sense for who Peter is and was with the aforementioned album Space Rider playing in his headphones. Peter and his mom share a nice moment in which they both touch on their love for music and how far out of touch his mom was with the slang used by cool kids today. It is here where the sequence is revealed to be a dream and Peter is actually having it on the Milano, the ship that serves as the Guardians' flying home and base for the duration of the game. And the Guardians at this time have only been a group for roughly 7 to 8 months and are still getting used to one another. In order to make a little bit of money, the Guardians decide to venture into the quarantine zone of the last Galactic War, which was fought some years before the game's setting. It is within this zone that the Guardians hope to track down and find a monster to sell to the infamous beast hunter Lady Hellbender. And they go through and they sort of clear out the area, and this is when they're kind of just planting beacons, and you're getting a sense for who the Guardians are. They have a little game, a little competition, who can shoot down the most little globs, and you're going through clearing out these globs. And while playing this sequence, you clear an area of a glob and you notice a little gem fall out. Peter and Rocket both run at it because they just think it's this little gem, it's money, and I tell you, my jaw dropped because I knew what it was or what it could be, and they had no idea. So they go ahead and they don't mind the stone at all because it ends up burning their hand as they're trying to hold on to it. They let it go, but without realizing that something was released from that stone. It starts to create a whole mess of issues within that quarantine zone, and the Guardians hightail it out of there. And it's once they're out of the zone that they're captured by Nova Corps Commander Corell.
Please don't be Nova Corps. Please don't be Nova Corps.
It is Nova Corps.
Who has just so happened to be Peter's old girlfriend some 12 years ago. Charged with trespassing and illegal materials that the Guardians are forced to pay a fine or face possible imprisonment. But before the team can get processed, an explosion knocks Nova Corps cadet Nikki Gold off the side railing, and Peter jumps after her. After saving her and escorting her back to safety, he learns that Cadet Gold is no other than Corell's 12-year-old daughter. Corell agrees to give the Guardians 3 cycles to pay their hefty fine. With basically zero money, the team plans to scam Lady Hellbender by either selling Rocket or Groot. Depending on which one you sell will lead to a different sort of back half to the mission, which is really cool, I think, in the choices that it involves. One either has you kind of stealthily sneaking through an area, or the other one has you go guns blazing when you go and decide to sell Rocket. Once you escape off the planet after scamming Lady Hellbender and getting your money, you do head to the Rock, which is where the Nova Corps are posted up and the Hal's Hope is docked. But here we find that several officers have gone crazy and spouting about something called the Promise. After witnessing Nova Corps members attacking and killing one another, the team decides to head to nowhere where they can try to get some help. And this is here where we go ahead and we meet Cosmo, who Cosmo is, as you might have seen in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, is a talking Russian dog. Cosmo's pretty cool. Went into the space in the early 60s and has been the chief of security for the station ever since. Cosmo agrees to aid the Guardians in investigating the Hal's Hope, which is now transmitting a weird, mysterious signal, and has sent them to the ship through the Continuum Cortex, a teleportation system on Nowhere. And during this scene, we get a little cameo from the Avengers, a little bit of cameo from Thanos, and Peter making fun of the name. What kind of name is the Avengers?
Ever and whenever with this thing. Even the places that don't exist, but do.
It's incredible.
Avengers! Assemble!
What kind of name is Avengers?
I know that sound. I am proud.
Definitely an alternate reality.
And aboard the Hal's Hope, we see that Raker is essentially using that ship to siphon faith energy from the planet Contraxia, going around to these planets and siphoning all the energy from the people and then moving to the next. And they find out that at the head of all this is the matriarch, who, to Peter's horror, is now Nikki, who has been possessed by the yellow gem. The Promise is this sort of illusion that is crafted from their deepest, darkest desires, and it's meant to harness their devotion as faith energy to power the church's fleet. Nikki tries to tempt the Guardians with the Promise, but each of them manage to resist breaking free before the church. Peter's particular promise will get most people as sort of a first pseudo ending to the game, whereas if you embrace the promise, it'll actually roll the credits, which I thought was pretty cool. But if you reject the promise, then you're forced to kill Peter's mom, which you then realize is a dream. And with no other options, the Guardians go to enlist the help of the Xandarian World Mind. But it concludes that the Church's victory is inevitable and flees the galaxy with the remaining Nova Corps. With no other options left to turn, Peter goes to take a rest and awakes to Drax, now with glowing purple eyes. And it's revealed that Drax has succumbed to the promise, locking the other members of the team in their respective rooms. And after departing on the planet Drax has landed on, the team is greeted by Mantis.
Hi, guys.
who we briefly met on Nowhere. After some time, the Guardians come face to face with the original golden god of the church, Adam Warlock.
So the shepherds found fresh flock.
Warlock, presumed to be dead, reveals that an alien entity is controlling Nikki and is in fact his dark side, Magus, whom he sealed in the yellow gem, which is revealed to be the Soul Stone. Out of options and money, the Guardians turn to Lady Hellbender, and they subdue a giant and legendary monster called Fin Fang Foom for her.
You pay one debt, then create another.
No, though I can kind of see
Enough. I will gather my forces.
Once the Guardians reach Nikki, Peter's able to enter her promise, where he learns that Nikki knows Corell is dead, and to the surprise of Peter, she is not his daughter, but an orphan that Corell has been hiding the entire time. Peter's able to convince Nikki to reject the promise once and for all, weakening Raker and allowing the Guardians and Warlock to take him down, once and for all. With the galaxy saved, the Guardians get to take a walk down center stage and bask in the glory. But that glory is cut short when Magus overpowers Warlock and is able to take control of his body. Mantis quickly links their minds together, allowing the team to fight Magus, all to the tune of Europa's The Final Countdown. And I cracked the biggest grin on my face when this song started playing the first time because of how meta it was for the final mission and how self-aware the game was. And after defeating Magus and getting an opening, Peter wields the Soul Stone and imprisons Magus within the stone once and for all. With the galaxy saved, for real this time, Peter mulls over how best to serve as a parent to Nikki and a mentor to the rest of the Guardians team, with Warlock explaining he shall return and aid the Guardians if called, with the game ending on a business card for the newly formed team of bandits, misfits, and mercenaries, or as they're better known as
Gardeners of the Galaxy?
While that was a very surface level explanation of the story, I promise you that it is much, much deeper than what I was just explaining. Because Guardians of the Galaxy surprised a lot of people, not just in its presentation and gameplay, but having an exceptionally written story with just as strongly written characters to complement it. And over the course of its 16 chapters, you will come to love some of the characters in ways that you didn't know were possible, as layers of past trauma are peeled back for each main character in more ways than what you are used to. While the combat might not be the amazing standout part of the game, it did have enough variety as the game progressed on, with new abilities unlocking and the ability to upgrade Peter's blasters with materials found in each mission. While it would have been nice to play as the other Guardians, I think it was a smart choice to make Peter the main focal point of the story. A trauma-induced man that really isn't a leader at all, but realizes that the people around him need him to be one, which makes it all that more heartbreaking that we will more than likely never get a sequel for the game. As the narrative lead, Mary Del Marley is now working at BioWare as of 2022, working as a senior narrative writer on the next Mass Effect game, and Square Enix publicly came out and said that this game did not meet sales expectations, despite being a critical hit. Add in that Eidos Montreal, the developer of the game, was also sold to Embracer Group in May of 2022, and their next project at this time is unfortunately still unknown. It is really a damn shame because you can feel the love and care that was put into each of these characters, and this team really had a blast working on and making this game. To the visual environments, to the music, to some of the best writing I've ever experienced in a video game in a long, long time. All of these points laid out make the case for why Guardians of the Galaxy is the greatest game that will never get a sequel. And if you did make it this far, I really do appreciate you taking the time out of your day to check out my video, and this has been my review for Guardians of the Galaxy.
In Soviet Russia, Cosmo would not trust words of capitalist scum. But this is not motherland, and Cosmo no power of collateral. Guardianship, stay on nowhere.
What? You can't take our ship.
My ship.